Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. So, just got off work, and tonight I've got to figure out what I am going to fix so I can have something to drive. The Jeep here has been getting daily driven for last month or so, and I don't like daily driving the trail rig. The flatbed over there has got the transmission out of it and needs some body work and fuel lines, fuel tanks, all that fun stuff. The little Triumph over here, well, it's been sitting for a decade and needs carburetor, needs some brake work, stuff like that. So I think the easiest one to get up and going is going to be this one right here. It's been sitting now for a little over 2 years. I broke the transmission mount in it. There was some videos of this truck when I first built it put up on the channel, but I don't know if they're still up or not. But yeah, this is my 2003 Z71 Tahoe. It's got a compound turbo 4BT Cummins in it, 4L80E trans, 14-bolt rear end. A lot of work, a lot of time, and yeah, sometimes things get away from us. So we're gonna pull this one out and see if we can get it going. So we've got everything moved out of the way. I'm going to get in here. Whew. It's a little on the filthy side, but get in here and hopefully get it put in neutral. We'll hook chain up, drag it out, and see what we got to work with. Might do a little cleanup on it first before we go anywhere. As far as getting it running, it shouldn't take much. But I know the battery that's in it is shot, so I'll throw another battery in it. But getting it running shouldn't take much, but the transmission mount was the big issue, so we'll see. Let's get it pulled out and see what we can find. So here it is. We'll give a quick walk around here. Little backstory on this. I've owned this for probably 12, 13 years now, something like that. It was a 5.3 truck, 4L60, pretty well bone stock with 98-ish thousand miles on it. When I decided to tear it apart. Let's see here. Whew. And drop a 4BT Cummins in it. Now, as far as I'm aware, this was the first Tahoe this body style that this had been done to. I know there's a guy up in Canada that built one a few years after this one was put together. And yeah, which sadly I missed out. He had commented on one of my videos, so I missed a chance to talk to him about it. This was back before I was actually doing this stuff on a regular basis. But yeah, It's a compound turbo, got a HX35 down low, HX30 up top. It is a VE pump, nothing special. It's got a 2500 HD front stack in it, so radiator and intercooler, core support, all of that. It's got a 4L80E from a 1 ton behind the Cummins, which I went through it, put all the goodies in it from Jake's Performance, low stall converter, so on and so forth. Mated up the stock transfer case to the back of the transmission, and now it's got a 14-bolt semi-float rear end out of a Hummer H2, if I remember correctly. And right before I parked it, I swapped the front diff because the rear was 410 when I swapped it in. The front was still 373. So found a 410 diff, swapped it in, and that's when I noticed that the transmission mount had broke on it. And I noticed a few other little things, started tinkering with it, decided to park it for the time being. But now I need something reliable to drive. So we're gonna start by cleaning up some of this mess, and then we'll see if we can get start up. So, still cleans up halfway decent. Up to, as far as I know, I'm gonna have to drop a battery in it, which I've got the battery in this thing mounted down there. And so I'm gonna pull that out. I'm gonna pull one of the new batteries out of the flatbed and drop in it. Other than that, I know there's a plug on the side of the head that is not in it right now. It's where a water meth nozzle goes. But other than that, I've got to check fluid and stuff like that, but it should pretty well fire up pretty easy. We'll see as far as that goes. But yeah, it's a little grubby still, but still cleans up halfway decent. It will once I actually get it running and actually wash it. But anyways, let's try and get that battery up and out of there. On that side. Yep. So, I don't see anything smoking or anything weird going on. So I'm going and Check the oil in this thing. Good there. So let's yeah, stink bugs and cobwebs. We have power. Let's see if we got all right then. Was not expecting that. This thing hasn't been started in years, literally. It is nice and warm outside, but I would have thought fuel would have drained back to the tank or something. But I didn't hear any odd noises or anything like that. Big cloud of smoke, but that's to be expected. So let's slide some of this stuff around and see if it'll move. Ugh. Stuff's filthy. The gauge cluster on this thing hasn't ever really worked right. The ECU kind of freaks out because it used to be electronic throttle, drive-by-wire, and all that stuff. But yeah, the fuel gauge, oil pressure gauge, temp gauge, battery gauge, that stuff works. But speedometer and tach do not. But brake pedal's kind of soft, but there's reverse. And we've got movage. Neutral. Reverse. Oh yeah. So just let it run for a minute. See if it's leaking anything or doing anything weird. The belt squeal. Alrighty then. I'm happy with that. So now we're steaming off that exhaust wrap and everything over there, but I don't see any oil or coolant puking out of anything. So we're gonna see if I can get this pulled in to the shop and yeah, take a look at that transmission mount. Well, you pulled into the shop. It's the first time it's moved in a good while. I don't see anything standing out. Too bad I don't see any oil pouring out of it, fuel pouring out of it. So I am considering how long this has been sitting. I'm gonna go on and unhook the battery for now while it's in here. But yeah, we'll crawl underneath here and take a look at this transmission mount setup. Now, apparently the battery went dead. So yeah, not sure where that cut off. But anyways, all the fabrication work as far as motor mounts, transmission cross member, front suspension stuff was all done by me. Of course, this was 10 years ago at least. This has got 3500 HD torsion bars in it, which the torsion bar mounts had to be pushed back 2 inches because the torsion bars in the trucks are longer than what's in the Tahoes. As you can see, custom cross member I've got going on here, which all I did was chop the factory cross member, push it back, plate it, and add some little gussets in there, which has worked out pretty decent. But yeah, the issue is, slide under here. This right here, I'm missing a spacer and I've got a bolt sheared off. So I'm gonna have to make a new spacer for this. I'm missing a bolt over here as well. So I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna get that bolt out. And yeah, it ought to be fun. But I'm also noticing I've got transmission fluid all over the place down here. I'm not sure why, but transmission's probably due for service anyways. I used to service it every year or so, but yeah, I'm looking. I don't see any major rust or anything for me. I did paint everything really well when I did all this work. I painted the frame and painted the underbody and everything. But yeah, anywho, we'll get into that here in a little bit. Well, I ran out of time last night. The time just got away from me when I was cleaning this thing up and trying to get all the mold and spider webs and cottonwood's nastiness and everything else off of it. So I'm back out here today, and the goal is to come under here. Let's see, get a little light on this action. Whew. Right. The goal is to support the transmission and drop this transmission cross member out of the way so I can get to the broken off bolts in the mount on the transmission itself. Get those bolts out, and hopefully we'll be able to get a new mount spacer made and put in place, get new bolts for it, get that mounted up, get everything tight there. And then as far as drivability, we'll need to check brakes and stuff like that because this thing's been sitting for a while, and run it, check it for leaks. But yeah, we should be pretty well good to go after that. So let's tear into this. We'll get this mount out of here and see what we can figure out. So now you can see how I actually built this cross member back in the day. Literally threw the stock cross member up on a chop saw, cut it off, took some, I think if I remember correctly, it was 3/16 plate, cut some rectangles out, moved the mount back as far as I needed to, welded it in, threw a gusset in here, and yeah, it's been fine for the last well, 10, 12 years, something like that. But now the problem. We can get under here. What I thought we had was one broken bolt, but it looks like we've got two broken bolts. So I gotta get these broken bolts out. Hopefully they'll come out pretty easy, but we'll see. Might have to drill them, but once that is done, I'll be able to get the cross member back up in here and get the transmission bolted back down. So let's see what this is gonna take. I did go on and throw a jack stand under the transfer case because this jack of mine is pretty well shot, likes to bleed off. So anyways, we'll see what we can figure out on these bolts. I didn't want to bore you too much, but I did get that center drilled. We're gonna start with an easy out. See if it'll come on out. Hopefully without breaking the easy out. Oh, there it comes. One down, one to go. So, I was able to get both the bolts out of the transmission mount. So, now I just got to run down to the hardware store, see if I can match up some bolts of a higher grade, and make a new spacer, because one of the spacers went missing. And yeah, we should be well on the way of putting this thing back together. So, just got back from the hardware store, got some flanged grade 10.9 bolts they're a little shorter than the ones we had in it before, but that won't be a problem. I have to make new spacers and see, the engine and transmission transfer case sit roughly 2 inches higher in the chassis than the factory 5.3 and 4L60 did. That was to better position everything. Didn't have to modify the oil pan. Everything cleared a lot better doing it that way, and it didn't hurt anything. So these go in between the rubber mount and the transmission itself, but I have to build new ones, and yeah, I don't really like these. I don't like how they were designed. If you can tell, it's just a couple big washers welded onto a piece of tubing, which was thick wall tube. But yeah, instead I'm going to take this piece of heavy channel and we're going to cap it on this side, weld it up, drill it through, and make 2 new spacers. This will be about a 1/4 inch lower than the originals were, which will make the bolts work out a lot better and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I'm gonna go on and cut these up and make these spacers real quick, and then we will get this cross member put back in and hopefully get this thing drivable again. Check that big guy out. That's an angry looking character. Well, there we go. Nothing too special or fancy, but should be plenty to hold the weight of the transmission. The holes are offset because the holes are offset in the mounts. And this should give us a good fit and plenty of bolt protrusion to go through the transmission mount. So yeah, now we should be able to get this put back in place. There we have it. New transmission spacers and hardware are put in. Cross members back in. Yes, it's filthy. Yes, there's a nut missing here. All that nut's doing is holding this bracket on, which this thing's not in use anymore. That's the fuel sensor. But the fuel lines passed through it, so it's still in place from when I swapped it. But yeah, that is done for now. So, next up, I need to start this thing up and let it run for a bit, let it warm up, and I'm gonna go on and change the oil in it. I'm pretty sure I've got oil filters for it here. So I used to keep them on hand. I've got fuel filters for sure. So we'll go on and change those out. I need to pull this AEM dry flow off here, wash it out. And yeah, it should be just about ready to take for a drive for the first time in 2.5 years, something like that. But yeah, we'll fire it up, let it run, check it over for leaks, and go from there. Well, everything's warmed up. I'm going to pull the drain plug up here. This thing holds a little over 10 quarts. Now, one of the things I do not like about how this all landed, everything worked out real nice except the drain plug lands right in this trough pretty well. So yeah, my intention is eventually I'm going to notch this out, run a piece of tubing through here so I can basically direct the oil flow out every time I change it. But for the time being, this will have to do. So, Fleet Guard filters. I will pre-fill this a little bit. Can't fill it all the way because of the angle it has to go in and up. But yeah, get a new filter on it, and we'll be running Rotella T5 1540 because well, it was on sale, and it's Rotella. It's good stuff. So I'll get the oil change, get the filter on it, get it filled back up, and we'll see if I've got fuel filters laying around. If I do, I'll change fuel filter on it. But yeah, got a couple little things left to fix. I noticed I got a boot off on one of the CV shafts. I've got new ones. I've got new CV shafts for it, actually sitting right here, as well as big brakes and 4-piston calipers and everything for the front. We're not going to tie into that today because I don't think I've got time. But we will come back to that. This is the big brake setup is actually factory calipers and rotors from a 2019-2020 Silverado. They're a good bit bigger rotor. They're a 4-piston caliper, and they will bolt on essentially to these NBS or NBS Tahoes and Silverados. You do have to space the caliper a little bit because it's got pistons on each side. It doesn't float. But yeah, that's for another day. But anyways, I'm gonna get this wrapped up and we'll get outside and get this thing cleaned up, washed, waxed, get the inside cleaned out, get all the trash thrown away, and hopefully have another drivable truck. First time it's been driven in a few years, so let's see. Brakes are spongy, so we'll pay attention to that. See how it does. Oh hey, my speedometer does work. Running through all the gears just fine. I'm not going to drive it very far because I don't have the cooling fan set back on it. This engine runs pretty cool. The only time these fans are needed is if you're sitting in traffic or anything like that for any length of time, typically. Otherwise, this thing used to run around 180, and that was it. So, but seems to be driving all right. So we'll keep going, put a few miles on it, and head back to the house. Well, first time on the road in a few years, and it seems to be doing okay. I've got a lot of work to do yet. It desperately needs cleaned up. It is filthy inside and out, and we got mold. It's not good. Don't care for that. So we're gonna get all this mess cleaned up. Next video on this will be yeah, just cleaning it up really well. We'll wash it, wax it, detail the inside of it, get everything cleaned up on it, go over it front to back, make sure we don't have anything that we're missing as far as any leaks or anything like that goes. But yeah, overall pretty happy, and she's back on the road. So with all that said, I'm gonna wrap this one up here. If got any comments, questions, complaints, drop them in the comments section below. If you want to support the channel, there's a PayPal account set up. The link to that is in the description of the video, as well as we've got SuperThanks enabled also. If you would, hit that like button. It helps us out and doesn't cost you anything. With that said, if you haven't already, please subscribe. We appreciate you watching.